Alright, so blessings. So I wanted to produce forth this video to touch on a subject that I've been meaning to touch on, and it's a very important subject. It's something that I've been meditating on, and I thought would be a good video to produce forth to help edify the masses or people that are seeking truth, knowledge, and understanding. And that is the purpose of denying God. That's what the subject of this video is going to be about. The purpose of denying God. And essentially the whole purpose of the world trying to deny God. Well, when I say the whole world in particular, you have a certain group of minorities, all right, the dark rulers of this world, known as the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and of course you got this non-space agency formerly known as NASA, all right, which by the way means to deceive in Hebrew. They have this dark, wicked, evil agenda of denying God, the Most High, the higher power. And the reason for that is because their goal is to convince the masses that there is no higher power. And if they can convince the masses that there is no higher power, that way they basically teach people and convince people that man has the final authority, man has the final say, and you can never question men because the rulers of this world essentially know everything, and they are gods. They are the higher power in their own right. That's essentially what they try to display and convince the masses. All right. So anyone seeking truth, knowledge, and understanding should understand that's the number one goal. And if they can achieve their goal, they have people under wraps. They have people in control. They have people in an emotional, spiritual, and psychological enslavement. All right, they have people in spiritual and psychological slavery. So that is essentially the end goal. And they do that by denying the Most High. And essentially what you gotta understand is everything starts from the beginning. All right, as far as the Most High's creation is concerned, they try to deny that. They go out of the way to deny that. So that's why I have this saying personally, and it's something I've been meditating on, truthfully speaking, and it's that if you deny the creation, you deny the creator. All right. So this is what contributes to history being rewritten to help paint an agenda, to help paint a narrative, keep the dark rulers of the world in a rulership position. They rewrite history, they rewrite education. They installed their own respective education system that is completely full of lies and deceit to brainwash the masses and keep them in a subjugated position. All right. As previously stated, they want people under their control, they want people under their authority. They don't want people to question anything. And they want to convince people that man is the final say, man has the final authority, and whatever man says, it goes. All right. What you got to understand about the dark rulers of this world is that they want to be like the Most High. They are the Most High in their respective ways. All right. Because ultimately, that's what the goal is, end of the day, is to be like the Most High. Because why? Job 9:24 says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the judges, the face of the judges thereof, just roughly paraphrasing. That's what Job 9:24 states. All right. So understanding that the wicked are in charge, the wicked are in rulership of this world, all you can do is expect nothing but pure, utter, hellacious wickedness. You can't expect righteousness from people that are inherently wicked. So people that are not treating you right are therefore not going to teach you right. Okay? So they start from the very beginning, and that's by denying God, they do so by denying his creation, aka deny the creation, you deny the creator. So that brings me to Genesis chapter 1. So this is Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. It reads, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that nullifies the whole quote unquote Big Bang theory, because what they teach us in science classes, they convince us that the earth was created by a quote unquote Big Bang. And even on TV, you got this TV show known as the Big Bang Theory. All right. And with TV, television is tell a vision, and the whole idea is to program the masses. All right, they use TV as a tool to brainwash the masses. So in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that's how the earth is created. That's how the heaven is created, because God created it. It wasn't a quote unquote Big Bang Theory. All right. Verse 2 says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. All right. So they teach us that the earth is a ball, a spinning ball, but the Bible makes it clear that there is a firmament, all right, a glass dome that separates the waters from below and from the waters above. We're going to explain it in verse 7. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And just on a side note, this explains why the sky is blue. Because when you go outside and it's a clear day and you see blue in the sky, that's water. That's water above the firmament. So that explains why the sky is blue. All right. But this is what modern science tries to deny. Verse 8 says, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together over the waters called he seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Verse 14 says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let there be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and it was so. Verse 16 says, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, aka the sun, the lesser light to rule the night. He made the star also. And again, this goes against the conception of modern science's creation of the earth. Because what? Because modern science has people believing that the sun is 93 million miles from earth, and the moon is 240,000 miles from earth. But the Bible says that the sun and the moon were inside the firmament, which means the sun and the moon and the stars are local. All right. The stars are not billions and billions and billions of light years away from earth. God's creation is close to us. It's very much local. God is very near. The Most High God is very near. All right. Again, modern science's agenda is to completely nullify Genesis 1. All right. Remember, I stated also, if you deny the creation, you deny the creator. And this is why flat earth is heavily mocked, because it's the truth. Anyone that believes in flat earth believes in the Most High God. And the majority of people on planet earth worship Satan, the devil himself. Verse 17 says, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. All right, so this is how we get light. The sun and the moon provide the earth light. One to rule the day and one to rule the night. All right. And just to completely top it off, I'm going to provide a picture that demonstrates the creation of the earth. Hebrew cosmology. So this is how the ancient Hebrews depicted the earth to look like. Waters above the firmament, under it says the sky, and then you got the sun on the left, the moon on the far right, you got the clouds, you got the stars, and everything below is obviously the earth, is the ground. You got the sea, you got the mountains, you got the foundation of the earth, which are also known as the pillars of the earth also. All right, and also you got shield, you got the great deep. So this lets you know that the earth is flat and that God is the creator of the earth, not the Big Bang Theory or whatever science has you believing. And the reason why also they want to deny God is because they want to let people know or try to convince people that there are no consequences to wickedness and that there is no life after death. Because if there is a higher power, if there is a God, that means there's a spiritual realm. All right. But they don't want to convince you that there's a spiritual realm. They want to convince you that you gotta live your life on earth and after you die, that's it. There is no resurrection to life after. Okay. And essentially, without no power either, without no higher power, there is no law, because God provided law. And without law, there is no order. And when there's no order, there's nothing but chaos and utter confusion. And that's what this world promotes. As I stated in previous videos, that this is Babylon 2.0. All right. The place is a complete utter mess. And this is how they want it. And also, it means if they can convince you that there is no higher power, then it automatically makes you submit to man, and it convinces you that you must fear man. All right. And this is why people give man concrete reverence, and this is why people idolize men and worship men, because they see men as the higher power. And this is what wicked people want. They want to be worshipped and glorified. All right. So that's the whole agenda. And what you got to understand is, in the world that we live in, people have agenda. You got to query as to what they're gaining from the message that they're perpetuating to you. Whatever motive people have, whatever idea they claim to may have, or they may seem like they got your best interest at heart, you got to ask yourself the question, what is the agenda behind this? All right. This is a form of basic wisdom, is when you question things. Okay. And this is why it's important to study and continuously seek truth, because once again, as I stated in previous videos, the truth is something that is not promoted in this wicked society. All right. When there's so much confusion and chaos, this place has no time or no room for truth. That's what people need to understand. And having spoken about the creation of the earth, now I want to talk about the creation of people, because modern science also has you believing that we evolved from apes, that humans evolved from, well, black people, so-called black people in particular, evolved from monkeys. And again, this is to discredit the creation of God. This is to undermine a particular race of people. They want to believe that we were an accident. They want to convince us that we are nothing special. All right. And again, they do this to keep us in a very oppressed and suppressed position. Okay. Because when you actually read the Bible, it talks about a specific group of people, the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, who were so-called black people. And according to the Bible, they were the Most High God's favorite people. And the evil people that rule this world, they understand this, which is why they try to nullify the Bible and say it's a fairy tale, and try to convince people that there's nothing worth reading. And this is why they heavily brainwash people And many people have been brainwashed and badly programmed to the point where they can't unsee all the lies and deceit that they've been informed. And that's why when you try and advise people to read the Bible, they are completely just so against it because of the programming that they've been subject to. All right. So when you actually read the Bible, it talks about the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, that God gave law, statutes, and commandments to. They were a peculiar people, because when you read Deuteronomy 7 and 6, they were described as a holy people. When you read Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 2, they were described as a peculiar people. All right. But it's very hard to believe in a world that has suppressed and rewritten history and have completely stripped the history and heritage of the so-called black man, woman, and child. All right. So I'm going to go deep into the nation of Israel and who the Israelites are at some point in the foreseeable future. But just want to bring this out just to touch on the issue very lightly. All right. This is the Most High God speaking to the nation of Israel on behalf of the prophet Amos. So this is Amos chapter 3 verse 2. It says, "You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities." All right. So of all the families of the earth, the Most High God makes it clear that he's only known the Israelites, that the Israelites were his favorite and peculiar / holy people. Okay. And if the world knew this, the rulership position will completely change. If the so-called black man, woman, and child knew that they were God's chosen people and that they were the people of the book, everything will completely just turn on its head. And this is why the education system exists in the manner that it does. And this is why so much lies and deceit are being perpetuated to keep them in a subjugated position. All right. That's essentially the end goal. And that's how they're able to maintain their dominance and just by, promoting what it is they're currently promoting. Okay. Because what you gotta understand is, once upon a time, there was a physical slavery where people were in chattels, people were chained up. But now, in this modern era, it's a spiritual, it's an emotional, it's a psychological slavery. And the education system is a massive contributing factor to that. The mainstream media is a massive contributing factor to that. Okay, because nothing but poison is being spewed into the minds of people. Okay. And now they understand that in order to strip the so-called black man, woman, and child of their heritage, you don't need to put them in slavery anymore. You don't need to chain them up with chains. Just install nothing but vain, deceitful philosophy to strip them off their heritage. All right. Because just quickly, when you read Jeremiah 17 and 4, it says, "Thou shalt discontinue from thine heritage, wherever the Lord shall scatter thee." All right. And obviously that's because we sinned, we transgressed against the Most High's commandments. So that's what also led to us being stripped of our heritage. But now in modern day Babylon, the vain philosophies, the deceitful philosophies are just adding salt to injury to help strip the heritage of a peculiar / chosen nation of people. Okay. And just to illustrate this fact also, I'm going to go to Maccabees. There's Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48. And with regards to rewriting history and completely falsifying everything that's written in the Bible, what they've done to completely rewrite history is to completely whitewash images of the Jews, who the real disciples are, and even the real image of Christ. All right, because the Bible talks about the nation of Israel being a people of color, and the people that are in the know are aware of this, and that's why in medieval times, around the 1500s, if I'm not mistaken, you had a family called the Medici family, and what they've done is completely just whitewashed the depictions of the Hebrew Israelites and who the real Jews were, from being a people of color into being Caucasian, so to speak. And the Bible makes that very clear, and I'm going to demonstrate that by showing proof of actual images of them whitewashing images. And laid open the book. So first Maccabees chapter 3 verse 48 says, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Okay, gonna go here. How do you pray it comes up? One. So yes, here's a perfect example. This depiction right here shows how the depictions, the true depictions of the Israelites were whitewashed. Okay, and it even got the biblical passage, first Maccabees 3:48. Can't really read the text, but essentially what I recommend you do is read it in your spare time. But it just shows a man obviously painting an image and completely just refactorizing it from a black image to a white image, from a so-called black person to a Caucasian. Let's see if we can get a full image here. Yeah, here's a better depiction actually. This is what happened in the Renaissance period. Okay, on the far left you had a true depiction, an original painting of Christ. Then you got the man in the middle changing the painting of Christ, and then now you got the new painting of Christ. And now, which brings me to my next point, because now if you can convince the so-called black man, woman, and child that the people in the Bible are Caucasian, what that will get you to do is worship the Caucasians and see them as the Almighty God. You'll see them as the master. You see them as the be or end all. They're the people of the final authority and the final say. They are above you and you are below them. And they do this by painting a visual image and convincing people that the people of the book were white. So it makes everyone convinced that these so-called Caucasians are God's chosen people. All right. So as I previously stated, they don't need to have us in physical chains anymore. They just have us in spiritual and psychological and emotional chains. Okay, this is why people are still dealing with a lot of trauma and feel very suppressed and oppressed, because their history is not being informed. Many people don't know their true history. Many so-called black people don't know their true history. Okay, and so this is essentially what they did. The Renaissance is also known as the rebirth. Okay, also known as rebirth. And again, it was the Medici family around this period that completely whitewashed the images. So anyone that's interested in knowing how that was all conducted, you could research that. The Medici, you could just go on YouTube or just research the Medici family, and you'll happen to discover how they went about their business. Okay, and essentially this is why they don't want you reading the Bible, because when you actually read the Bible, it gives you a true depiction of Christ and how he actually looked like. So I'm gonna go to it. Revelation. So this is Revelation. I'm going to start from verse 1. All right, this is John the Revelator. And what it says here, Revelation 1:1 says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, or in Hebrew, Yahushua HaMashiach, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. Okay. Verse 2 says, who bear record of the word of God and of the testimony of Yahushua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, and all of the things which he saw. Okay, so these are the things which he saw, because essentially what it was, John the Revelator was given a vision, all right, and everything that he saw in the vision, he had recorded it. And so I'm gonna jump to verse 14. So this is the depiction of Christ, all right. It says, Revelation 1:14, his head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. And verse 15 says, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. So it says his feet were unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. So it's describing Christ, or Hamashiach, as a dark-skinned man. All right, so the Bible makes it clear that he was dark-skinned. Okay, as a matter of fact, Daniel had the same vision. Daniel, was it 10, I think? Can't. So this is Daniel chapter 10, verse 5. It says, then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz, as describing his physical clothing. Verse 6 says, his body also was like the beryl. I believe that means green, if I'm not mistaken. And his face as the appearance of lightning. And his eyes as lamps of fire. And his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass. Okay, because brass is what is a brownish color. Like, for example, a 1p or 2p coin is an example of brass. All right, so it's depicting Christ as brown skin. And the voice, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. Because was it the top half of verse 7 says, and I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. Okay, so everything was a vision what Daniel had saw. So that's what was recorded. So Christ was depicted as someone that was so-called black. Okay, so essentially, if the world cannot see that Christ was black, which will essentially mean that the so-called black man, woman, and child wouldn't be honored or respected. Okay, so essentially, to do nothing but promote and exceed disrespect and obliterate and annihilate the black race, so-called black race, to do so by making sure that they don't know that their Messiah was a so-called black man. All right, and this is what King David most spoke about with regards to the crafty counsel which other nations had, devised amongst themselves to plot against the nation of Israel, which I'm gonna just read very quickly. I'm gonna read it from, I'm gonna read it from verse 2, ending at verse 6. So this is the book of Psalms chapter 83 verse 2, and says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Okay, it says they have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thine hidden ones. Verse 84 says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So this is what I was talking about earlier when I spoke about how they go about stripping the so-called black man, woman, and child of their heritage. Okay, it's all through vain philosophy, the education system, the mainstream media. Okay, these are tools being used to brainwash the masses. Okay, so this is why in these times we must seek truth in a world full of lies and deceit. People that are wicked will teach wickedness. People that are people that are unrighteous will teach nothing but unrighteousness. Okay, so it's your duty, it's your responsibility to go forth and seek the truth for what it is, and read it and understand it and accept it for what it is. Okay, so that's essentially it. And yeah, for anyone that's seeking truth, knowledge, and understanding, I do hope this was edifying for you. And other than that, I say mighty blessings. I catch you on the flip. Peace.